Okay, guys, so for my devotion musings today, I'm being called to really speak a truth of mine. I did a really intense workshop yesterday about finding my soul gifts and my soul purpose. It was an archetypal workshop with the Great Mother, and she told me that my gift was love. Love, love, just love, literally, just kept saying love. And I've always known that. See, this makes me really emotional. It's just a really scary place for me to go because that's where I've been wounded so many times, is in my very tender, very compassionate heart. So I shut that off. Well, to a point. Like, I couldn't fully shut it off because it's just who I am. It's who I've always been. And I've always seen the woundedness in people and where they're hurt. And I'm always drawn to that place. And I want to fix it and make it better, put a Band-Aid on it. Which was not a healing response for me. It wasn't healthy for me. And so I attracted a lot of people into my life that needed healing, and it became a very unhealthy dynamic where they were either hurting me, usually, because they were wounded, and I had no boundaries, or they were taking too much from me, and I was overgiving. So I had to learn how to create really strong boundaries with myself and what I was willing to do for people, how I was willing to help, how I was willing to show up, and I had to make me come first, which is not something I knew how to do. I knew how to make myself come first in a wounded way because of how I was wounded. I definitely have narcissistic tendencies where I have a really hard time seeing anyone else but myself when I get really overwhelmed. And I get overwhelmed, or I used to get overwhelmed easily. So it would come off as being selfish because I literally just either was overgiving or I wasn't noticing anybody at all. Like, I could only think about me and my own survival. So that was really painful too, because I always felt guilty, like I was doing something wrong, because I wouldn't notice when other people needed help or were in distress. And a different way, like, helping clean up a mess or helping with a child or something like that. Like, that stuff I don't generally like even notice. When it comes to somebody who's in like extreme emotional or spiritual or mental distress, that's when I notice and I'm drawn to it. And then that's when I overgive. Wow, I never really thought about it that way before. So that's how that works for me. And because of this really big compassionate heart that I have, I feel like I need to speak to something that is probably going to be controversial, which is really sad to me that compassion is controversy. Because when I look at the world, this is how I see it. And I do believe this is how we heal the world, is through compassion. So for me, compassion isn't about giving myself away anymore. Compassion isn't about excusing toxic behavior. Compassion isn't about letting someone abuse you or victimize you. It's not about that at all. And I used to think it was when I was very wounded myself. There is a way of having loving boundaries and still having compassion for somebody even when they're doing horrible, terrible things. Both can be true. And for me, that is my greatest gift, is I see where somebody's hurting, and what I see is their little inner child, that little child that was hurt over and over and over again, and because of that, they're acting out in this horrible, toxic way. Again, not excusing the toxic behavior. It is their responsibility to stand up for themselves, to stand up for their own healing, to reclaim themselves. Nobody can do that but them. And I 100% do not take responsibility for that, but I can still see that. I can still see their broken heart, and I can still have compassion for them. So the reason why I want to talk about that is because I'm getting really activated by watching how much every single media news source is just absolutely shaming the president. And I know this is why this is going to be controversial, is because everyone's in this boat of let's just completely tear him down and shame him and say all these horrible, terrible things about him because we're justified in doing so because he's doing all these terrible things to us. Two wrongs do not make a right. I don't understand this concept of let's hurt somebody because they're hurting us. That's not how we heal, and that's not how we make someone stop doing that behavior at all. In fact, it only solidifies that behavior in him. So as a child, he was obviously very shamed. He was obviously very emotionally and mentally abused, if not physically abused. This created what we see now. No, it's not an excuse for him to create toxic behavior. And I can also see how sad and how scared and how shamed he is and terrified he is. And both are true. And that's where my heart goes. And that's where my heart hurts for him and for other people like him. And if we continue to shame him publicly, and we continue to say horrible, terrible things about him, we think, oh, he'll see this and he'll feel bad, and then maybe he'll change his behavior. I guess that's what people are thinking. Or if we shame him enough, then we don't have to feel as shamed by what he's doing. I don't understand this mentality. Or if we shame him and talk about how stupid he is enough, then maybe he'll see the error in his ways. No, absolutely not. He never will. In fact, you're just creating the same exact pattern that happened to him in childhood, which then only solidifies the defense stronger so that he'll continue to do more and worse and dig deeper down into that defense. If we are not able to see and have compassion for people like this, we will not change the world. And absolutely stand in your truth. Stand for what's right for you. Stand for what feels good for you. When Kali comes in, the dark goddess Kali comes in, who's amazing and fierce and stands in her boundaries, she's not about doing it with shame. She's all about doing it with love. Kali will chop your head off, which is really your ego, with love. Love, 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 and compassion. She doesn't go after you with shame. She doesn't go after you with hurt and hate. Because if you continue that cycle, you're literally just creating more of that energy that you don't want. You're screaming at this president to have compassion for people, and yet you have none for him. It doesn't make any sense. You can't ask for something that's so hypocritical. You can't ask for that from somebody and then not be willing to give it. And that doesn't mean that you don't stand up for yourself. What do you want? You're against him. You're against him. You're against everything he does. That's great. That's wonderful. That doesn't create what you want. What do you want? So go stand in your truth and go get what you want then. Go do the opposite of whatever this is that you don't want over here. Focus on how you want to change the world, how inspired you are to make change, how much you want to be in a different world, and go out and create that and make that. That doesn't mean you have to sit there and shame someone. That doesn't mean you have to hate someone. That doesn't mean you have to be violent or aggressive towards someone. In fact, that creates the opposite of what you want. Compassion and love, regardless, is what creates healing. And again, that doesn't mean you let someone run you over. That means you may cut that person out of your life. That means maybe you don't watch the news. That means maybe you don't listen to what that is. That means maybe you go and you create a wonderful group of people that is all about doing the opposite of what you think is hurting the world. You do this space from love. You do these things from a space of love and compassion. And you see how hurt and wounded that person is, and you send them love. And you can give somebody love just like Kali does, and be fierce and hold your boundary and tear down all the things that aren't truth without shaming somebody and without hurting somebody. Two wrongs do not make a right, ever. And if we can sink down into this space with ourselves and others, this is how we actually change the world. Okay. This makes me so emotional because I know this is my gift. I can feel it so deep in my heart and in my third chakra, my solar plexus. This is what I'm meant to bring to the world because I can see it so clearly. And I just send you all so much fierce Kali love. Tear down your own walls. Tear down your own ego. Love yourself so fully. And love everyone else so fully that all they can do is be light and love and courage and strength. If that's what you want from your president, if that's what you want from the world, then you need to be willing to do it and be it. Blessed be, loves.